Hey everyone, this is Keegan83 and welcome to the E3 Post Impressions video for 2013. Well everyone, another E3 has come and gone, and well, like a bunch of others who have done this sort of thing, I'm going to be going into my thoughts and reactions on what happened at this year's E3, both in a nutshell and in detailed description. I think from how I'm going to start here is I'm going to go into the press conferences first and then go into the third parties. It seems to be a pretty good formula so far, and I am doing this on the fly, by the way. There's no script involved, just mainly a bunch of notes. And also, for the record, like before, I'm going to be giving my own perspective on a lot of things. The ups, the downs, the positives, and the negatives. If I do miss anything, by the way, feel free to comment. But do keep in mind that this is going to be coming from my own thoughts and perspectives. And there are games that I know more about than others, so once again, if I do miss something or even misquote anything, you guys feel free to let me know, because I do like being in the know on things, and I like hearing what you guys have to say. So, let's see. We have a bunch of E3 news conferences to look at first. We got Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, EA, Ubisoft, and Konami. I think we're going to start with the big three first. Much like the pre-show, go into depth on the big three, and then transition over to the third parties. But with EA, Ubisoft, and Konami having news conferences, I may make an exception to two of them. I think I'm going to be going with Ubisoft and EA when it comes to this, and I'm going to move Konami over to the third-party segment. It doesn't mean I'm going to be phasing out Konami at all. I just figured they seem a little bit better suited for the third-party segment, especially since I already put them there for the pre-show. And for Ubisoft and EA, I make exceptions here because they held press conferences on the same day that Microsoft and Sony did. So, without further ado, let's get into this. I think we're going to go with Microsoft first because they were the first of the big three to show off their new set of games. Not a particularly great news conference. I think it is better than the last two that they've had, but it definitely could have been better. If there was anything to drum up for Microsoft's news press conference, they pretty much went out and did what they were supposed to do. They were going to talk about games, which they were pretty minimal on when it came to the May 21st unveiling of the Xbox One console, which is the successor to the Xbox 360 console. Among the other positive reactions that I did get out of the Microsoft press conference was a pretty decent variety when it came to games, and they showed off some new exclusives, which is something that they did need. They did definitely need something different, especially with all the first-person shooter games that came out in the later part of the Xbox 360's career. And for the record, everyone, not all first-party Xbox games are first-person shooters. I did say that in my pre-show. I'm going to correct that. There were actually a few games that were outside of that genre, but some of the most popular games on the 360 are actually first-person shooters, so I did misquote that there. So what kind of games did we see when it came to this press conference? Well, there were games like Rise, Son of Rome, which features a Roman commander whose name kind of escapes me at the moment, Marius Titus, I believe his name is, and you're leading a charge against a civilization which is apparently at war with the Romans that you're leading. This game is a hack-and-slash action game with some cinematic cutscenes to help promote the action and a lot of quick-time events. It's kind of been labeled as a not God of War game, to be honest, and while the game is being developed with the Crytek engine, with Crytek being the developer while Microsoft Studios is publishing this game, there's not really a lot that the game has had to offer, at least at this time. Graphically, it looked good, but if you go beyond just the hack-and-slash combat and the quick-time events, there's really not much to go about. In fact, is the game going to become a generic third-person action game that ends up disappearing shortly after the launch of the Xbox One? Not quite sure when it comes to that. The game did look good once again, but there's still some questions that people are probably going to be asking about this one. The other exclusives involve a game that hasn't had a sequel since 1996 in a series, Killer Instinct, which is being co-developed by Rare and Double Helix Games, who I mentioned did the Green Lantern Rise of the Manhunters game back around 2011. And that surprised me. The fact that Double Helix is actually going to get a chance to work on a game like Killer Instinct alongside Rare, that's pretty good recognition From a positive perspective, the game looked good on combat, it looked fast-paced, the game looked good, it looked attractive. But then there's the controversy surrounding the game, which involve the possible free-to-play reports that were reported among people from, say, IGN, for example, but apparently that may have been the wrong report. There were some misreports from some of the mainstream critics, and IGN is one of them, but I'm just saying that there. Among these reports is the game Killer Instinct is going to be a free-to-play launch game that's exclusive to the Xbox One, and among the free-to-play option here is that you download the game, but you only get one character, and you have to pay money to download the rest of the characters. But then came another report that helped diminish this previous report that you can buy the game in particular ways, like buy the entire game yourself, or just buy the game with specific playable characters as options. I'm not quite sure on that, to be honest, but while it sounds like a good business strategy, is this game going to fall through the cracks as well? Because while the game looks good, is it going to be successful? Especially in regards to the controversy surrounding the Xbox One. I guess only time is going to tell with the Killer Instinct game. It looked good, but once again, could it fall into the cracks? We'll have to wait and see. There were other exclusives announced as well. There was Forza Motorsport 5, which is another sequel in the long-running Forza series, which is exclusive to Xbox systems. There was Kinect Sports Rivals, which Rare also announced. And there was also another game called Crimson Dragon, which is made by the Panzer Dragoon creators. That series, it looks pretty good, to be honest. While my interest is in Panzer Dragoon a bit these days, we don't know how this game's going to turn out. And while the game pretty much looked like a Panzer Dragoon game, this game did not have any sound when they actually played the trailer, and that was one of the first detriments to the Xbox press conference. Another game is Dead Rising 3, which is being developed internally from Capcom's Vancouver studio, but published by Microsoft Studios for this one. The game takes a bit of a different turn from the previous two Dead Rising games. Instead of the beat-em-up style combat that involved an over-the-top style element, this game has more of a survival horror aspect, like you're fighting against zombies, you're running from them all the time, and you're in places like, say, a bathroom where you find weapons and inventory items to use, and you can use them at any particular time. From what I heard, there's probably hundreds of weapons in this game. I don't know for sure, but from what I heard, there's a ton of things to use in this game. I will admit, I'm not really a horror buff, but Dead Rising 3 actually wowed me the most on Xbox One games. And the game did look good. I liked the scope, it had some fun things about it. It looks like it could be a good title. And they did show gameplay on this one. That was one of the things that's kind of a detriment as well to the Xbox One conference, is that they didn't really show gameplay on some of their games. There was Sunset Overdrive from Insomniac Games, and then there was other titles like D4 and Quantum Break. Those games are exclusive, but they didn't really show anything. And there was also another one, which was called Below, which Capybara Games, who designed Critter Crunch, they showed a bit of gameplay, but there wasn't a lot to really see. It kind of reminded me a tad of Dungeons & Dragons, where you have a pixelated sprite and you're going upon an environment that has a bit of a pixelated look. But once again, I didn't see much of the game, but at least it's something different from, say, a first-person shooter game. There were also other things being teased, like a Black Tusk developed AAA title, which is exclusive. And Black Tusk, by the way, it's a studio from Canada that Microsoft is funding. While they teased something, they didn't really talk about anything. Of course, there were other titles like Project Spark, which is essentially The Sims Little Big Planet or Sporg, where you pretty much create stuff. I'm all for a level creator, but not really a lot wowed me a lot on this one. And then there was Halo, where the Master Chief's going through the desert. He's in a cloak, so we don't get to see him at first. Big, giant robot comes out of the sand. He's got wings, and Master Chief ends up unveiling himself as he takes off the hood of his cloak, and it's him. So it looks like, yeah, it's another Halo game by 343 Industries. The game has been said to have some newly upgraded engine tech with 60 frames a second. That's all fine and dandy. It might come out next year, but there just wasn't much to go on this one, and some people are getting quite sick of Halo. I'm not going to detriment Halo for being a terrible series, no. From what I hear, Halo is a pretty good series, even though I haven't really dove into it. But some people are getting a little bit tired of it, and, well, there's just not much else to say in regards to that. But at least with Halo, you're at least getting something quality-wise, especially for those who do enjoy the series. So for Halo fans, you can rejoice. He's coming to the Xbox One, Master Chief, but we don't know when that's going to be exactly. Maybe next year, but only time will tell for that. Among other detriments to this news conference was the Battlefield 4 demo delay. And what happened was the EA representative, he walks up, tries to give Battlefield 4 a push. Okay, here's our trailer, and they don't show it for a good minute. There was a delay or technical problem involving the display of the footage. And even the crowd, they started talking to the guy. He looked embarrassed by the end of it all. And boy, it just wasn't a good moment. And this was on national TV of all things. Despite the limited televised material, because you had to go to game trailers for it, game trailers showed the Microsoft and EA press conferences on national TV. And the fact that he got embarrassed on national TV, I mean, man, you can only imagine what that could be like. Overall, I have to say this wasn't a great news conference. It was better than the last two from Microsoft. However, in the end, they didn't talk about some things, and that included the controversy surrounding this system. Among these things are, you got to connect to the internet all the time with this new Xbox One system. You have to have at least one internet connection in 24 hours during a day. And if you don't, there's a chance the system might not work right. There's the used games scenario, which has definitely been a concern coming into this E3. And from the looks of it, there's a chance that you can only really install the game once. And even if you lend it to a friend, the friend that you have to put on the friends list has to wait 30 days at least in order to probably even borrow the game. And on top of that, if it's a used game, you may even have to pay a fee for it. While it's kind of been confirmed nor deny in this area, there's a chance it might happen. Say for example, the new Halo game comes out, you enjoy it, but your friend wants to borrow it because he's getting interested. Well, you lend it to him, and he's been on the friends list long enough, and this is, keep in mind all examples here. Your friend goes to install the game, but apparently there's a chance they may have to pay a fee to install the game themselves, and among these one-game transfers in possibilities, that game would transfer over in installation, and all of a sudden you don't have the ability to play your game again because the transfer was already made. And not to mention other things like indie developers not really being able to self-publish on the new Xbox. There's a subscription-based system that's required for you to play online. It's region-locked. I mean, this system is just rather anti-gamer, and it's not that great to be hearing this kind of stuff. And, well, among other things to also say is we did get a range of release and a price. It's coming out this November, the Xbox One, and it's price tagged at $499. Or if you want to put it real basically, it's $500. $500 is not a great price for a game platform, and I can say that for at least two systems here. There was the SNK Neo Geo Advanced Home Video System, which was $600, and this was back in 1991. System did good, had some good things, ultimately flopped, and one of the big reasons was the price tag. There was the 3DO, it was $700, that didn't sell very much, and the PS3, out of those previous two systems, that's the most successful. That one started at $600 at the highest with a $400 lower model, and ultimately that had to be scaled down to $300, which is a much better price scale. So in the end, this press conference, it wasn't that great. There were some good things. I'll give the press conference its quotes. And actually, they also went into detail on supporting the Xbox 360 more. Well, not really more, just continued support, despite the system that's going to be 8 years old. They canceled Microsoft points, another good point, and they're going to go to full-blown currency. They also announced two other games that are going to be coming to the system, like Max the Curse of Brotherhood, which kind of looks like Limbo in people's eyes, and World of Tanks, which used to be just a PC game. They also announced a perk for Xbox Gold membership members who apparently are going to get 2 free games on Xbox every month. starting with Halo 3 and Assassin's Creed 2 among this new gold membership perk. Not bad, but they also went off and said, Microsoft, if you don't want to go with the Xbox One and its policies, go get the Xbox 360. So that means you're basically saying, if you don't want the new one, go for a system that's 8 years old to avoid these current policies. Now, I'm not going to say the Xbox 360 is terrible, no. By this point, the Xbox 360, it's a good platform. Despite all the red ring problems and the technical issues that the system had early on, the system does have a good library behind it, and Xbox Live is still a good resource to go to on the Microsoft Xbox 360. But the fact is, Microsoft, this is not a good way to enter the 8th generation. They seem to be caught up in a direction now that it's got a bit of an ignorant side to them. These policies are not very gamer friendly. The system overall, it's kind of like, well, actually, let me put it in a bit of a different way here. This may be the worst console received, and it's not even out yet, since the Sega Saturn in 1994. And that's not a great thing. We know what happened to the Saturn when it came out. Sony came and blew it out of the water. And I'm going to emphasize that even more after I get done with Sony and the overall press conferences. So overall, if I had to put a letter grade, which I think I'll do here, I'm going to give the Xbox 3, not the 360, I'm going to give the Microsoft press conference for E3 2013 a C-. There were some good things in it, which involved exclusives, nice, okay range of games, and some pretty good exclusive titles for the Xbox One. And graphically, I'll give the system perks for that, but, you know, of course, graphics aren't everything. You gotta look at the gameplay, which is probably the most important thing when it comes to a game. It has to be fun to play, otherwise the graphics and sound and everything else that would be considered revolutionary, it wouldn't be worthwhile if the gameplay was terrible. Batman Dark Tomorrow is a good example of that, and that game was awful. But anyway, yeah, Microsoft press conference, a C- out of the grade scale. Well, with one news conference out of the way, we still got 4 more to do. So I think from what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to resume with part 2 in the next video. So hope you'll stay tuned to that. I'm going to try to get this done as quick as I can. So I'll see you next time on the next edition of the E3 Post Impression Show for 2013. See you in a bit.